Welcome to another Workshop Wednesday brought to you by schoolofbookkeeping.com, where it's casual conversations for serious workflows. And now we have the three of us here today. So welcome.
After yesterday, that was so fun.
Yeah. Well, welcome back to Rachel. You were gone at Appy Camp last time that we were speaking with Shawn, and we have Shawn again with Katana joining us as we are going through this series of feature comparisons for the advanced inventory minded folks that might be looking or evaluating QuickBooks Enterprise Platinum Edition with a cloud-based solution, and really the whole idea of what I was hoping that this series would really uncover for us and a lot of people watching now or later is that, what do my workflows look like today, and what would they look like moving to a cloud-based solution? And like one of the things that we had talked about last time, Shawn, was kind of like my big aha takeaway from that was, as we were talking about multiple locations in QuickBooks, they're kind of defined like bins are defined as kind of like a sub location, where that is not the definition of what you would call a bin in Katana, right?
Yeah, that's right. So to sum it up, I guess in Katana, you have multiple physical kind of building locations typically, and they can have different use cases as well. If you outsource manufacture, maybe you want to move some inventory to your outsourced manufacturing company before you receive it in as a finished product. But for the most part, a location is a physical location, and a bin is where you house that inventory within that location.
Yeah, and as we discovered last week, you assign, Katana assigns the bin location on the item level, and whereas QuickBooks, it's kind of like this hierarchy of a parent location, and then a bin is a sub location within that location. It's assigned like that, right? Like it's a completely separate field, and it's not assigned on an item basis, which you actually have, Katana gives a little bit more flexibility because you can have the same item in different locations, but in different bins. And it becomes what I've kind of taken away from all of that your inventory site list in QuickBooks Enterprise ends up being very unruly, because you have this whole hierarchy of bins and locations being essentially on the same list. And that's what that's why I think as we were talking yesterday about our topic today, which is traceability. And we'll start to define that first before we go into that. But batches and lot numbers and serial number tracking. Again, there is a slightly different way of of things being handled between the two systems, and that's where I think this series will come in very handy, because people evaluating different things might want to know, well, how is this going to play out within moving to a different solution. And you had mentioned last week, Shawn, that there's not like it's a best practice, I guess, if somebody is actually considering the switch, is to work with an implementation specialist to actually move things over. You want to recap a little bit about that, what we talked about last time?
Yeah, and I think when you look at, Dan, I like your definition of sort of simpler inventory management through to more advanced inventory management. And as we're starting to discuss more advanced inventory management aspects, such as lot or batch traceability, expiration dates, or even serialization, you're starting to get into that more advanced aspect or realm. And when you get into that more advanced realm, the software can add a ton of efficiency into your business, but you have to get it set up right. You have to get your data imported correctly. And that's where a partner can really help ensure you're getting the full value out of that system and utilizing it correctly. Because all too often you see these businesses have more advanced requirements and they're utilizing a system, whatever system it may be, maybe 10%, 15% of the actual capabilities of that software, because they can never really get it up and running. And they end up just running most of the operations in Excel.
I think we've all seen this a lot of times.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Rachel, in your experience, is that what you typically find a client doing? Is that they're just kind of barely using the system that they are utilizing at first, and then just going with what they know?
Yeah, I mean, and it's also they just don't know how, or I mean, just think about when you've implemented something for your own self and didn't really understand what it was. I don't know. Maybe Dan, you haven't had that
Never
experience, but I have, and then I'm like, forget it. Like, I'm not even going to use this anymore because it's so frustrating, or I just don't have the time, So
Yeah.
I understand that feeling of, this is broken. It's all your fault, company, right? And so they want to blame somebody. But, in actuality, it's just that, this concept is now for me just almost kind of like second nature. But for, somebody that might not know, it can be really frustrating. So you definitely want an implementation partner. And I've been implementing here probably like for the past 6 months, even though I told Shawn, I never want to implement ever, ever, ever. And yet here, this is what we're doing. Ask Jamie and Diana. It's nothing but implementation over here right now, but it's fine. But it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, and there are companies that specialize in it too, right?
Yeah,
so,
they specialize in it. So
yeah,
we do it for what we're going to discuss today. Barcode scanning and lot tracking, I am not implementing that. I can implement something that does not need that. And if it's something that, is going to have that complexity, that is going to go to a full implementation team.
Yeah.
That's the, I'm trying to think of a witty thing to say, but it's just not coming to me, but like that's where you draw the line, right? Like the red flag.
Where I draw the line.
So do you find, Rachel, that the people that come to you are already in something, or are they basically starting from scratch for the ones that when you're bringing them in?
50, half and half.
It depends. It's the
adult diapers.
The adult diaper answer.
It totally depends. I can't even tell you guys what is happening with these people. No, I love them, but yeah, it's half and half.
And that seems to be, par for the course, and that's why we kind of make a joke of this answer, is that there is no such cookie cutter, one size fits all thing. And that's why we wanted to have, these kind of discussions ahead of time, so that you don't get yourself into trouble when you're like, oh, I didn't know you had a lot number or or serial number to track. So asking these questions up front. So
that's where an implementation partner, just to kind of tie it up, is they ask those right questions that you don't even know to ask when you're evaluating solutions. And so that's, I think, a key part to the partner aspect is engaging with them, not after you've made the decision, right? It's not like, hey, let's call the implementation partner and get this thing I bought up and running. Have them be a part of that evaluation process, because that'll they will help you ensure you're asking the right questions, and then you're evaluating the different solutions for the right feature set.
Yeah. It's what's the saying? It's I have good judgment because of experience, and my experience comes from bad judgment. Right? I mean, it's you always make new mistakes, and then as long as you're making new mistakes, then you're not going to be making the same mistake over and over again. So speaking of, no, we're not speaking of mistakes. We're talking about QuickBooks, and I'll throw up. Let's see. I want to try these things side by side, but I can't do that. Okay, so I'll just turn off Shawn.
And by the way, Dan, I wanted to mention yesterday in the QB Power Hour, there were certainly a lot of comments of, but I can do this in QuickBooks Enterprise. Why wouldn't I just do it there?
Yeah, I did. I definitely saw that. Shawn, if you didn't know, we did a e-commerce fundamentals course overview on the QB Power Hour, and there were a lot of conversations about when we got to the inventory management piece. It was like, well, I could just do this in Enterprise. I could just do this in Enterprise was the common theme.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, you can do these things in Enterprise. However, it's the connectivity to other things where it gets a little complicated because there's typically more things on the other side of that.
Yeah, and Dan came up with this really great saying that we're going to implement and put forward. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right. Exactly. Okay, so we're going to talk about the traceability aspect of QuickBooks Enterprise and compare that with Katana. So traceability. Well, Shawn, what would you classify or define the traceability bucket or defining that as?
Yeah, so I would say traceability is usually driven from an industry standard. So some of the most common places you'll see traceability requirements are food and beverage, medical devices, pharmaceutical areas, and then maybe get into electronics where you have serialization aspects to those components, or medical devices also will have that. So it's driven by an industry standard and often in support of a recall or warranty. And so that at the end of the day, if you think of why it's in place, it helps you understand how to use it and what some of the functions you should be looking for in a solution that offers it.
And because of this traceability, I mean, I've seen, like, I remember, people would just have bouts of food poisoning or bad drugs, but not necessarily, the rest of the world wouldn't know about it because it was so isolated and disjointed. Now it's almost like as soon as somebody, has a bad salad from Wendy's, I'm looking at you, Shawn, the world knows about it, not just because of the ramifications of eating the bad salad, but because there is such an accountability of the traceability. People could run those reports and alert their customers or clientels pretty quickly. My truck told me that there was a recall, right? I didn't have to wait for a piece of mail to show up or anything like that. It showed up on the app. It's like, your car may explode. Oh, okay. I better take care of that.
And if you think about it, like the potential cost, if you're a business that has some sort of default or recall situation, it comes down to how specific your traceability is. So, if you're doing lot traceability and you actually can't narrow down the specific lots that are impacted through to raw material and the finished goods, you then have to take a wider chunk. It then goes down to, okay, anything we made over this date range is now recalled, rather than anything we made with this raw material is recalled. And so it can really impact a business when you think of something like that occurring, and can they keep that sort of impact tighter because they have better traceability requirements, not to mention making it just easier to meet compliance standards, which can be really costly from an operational efficiency perspective.
All right. So in looking at what we're seeing here in Enterprise, the serial number, lot number feature is an either or functionality. So when you turn on serial number tracking, you can't do anything with lot numbers, or vice versa. If you turn on lot numbers, you can't do anything with serial numbers. And that, I think, is the biggest differentiation between, QuickBooks Enterprise and something like Katana, as we'll unpack there, is that you can actually use both in Katana. So this when we have an industry that has a serial number and a lot number need, with Enterprise, we are forced at that point to use custom fields, right? Because you those fields are no longer available as lot numbers or serial numbers. Deciding whichever one is the heaviest workflow needs. You choose that one, and then you use the other one for the other field, which has its own set of problems because you have all this great functionality tied to this feature, like the built-in reports and those types of things. But then you can't do that, with your other thing, and then it just ends up making more work to make it work, right? So in this feature, it's really just activating it, and then specifying whether you want to be alerted and what transactions they're going to be utilized in. And newish feature, I think it was in 2023, so 2 years ago, they added the option finally of an expiration date, which was, that was a what took you so long, type of thing, because they had lot number, serial number tracking for probably 10 years before they added the expiration date as an option, which, for something like food and pharmaceuticals and in warranty purposes, you want to have that expiration date be part of your serial number, lot number tracking, because you need to know when something's going to expire, like the warranty or the food, so that you don't send it out. I have a client
right now that they're making sauce that expires in 3 months. So, I mean, that has to be tracked.
Yeah. So fortunately, it's there now, but for those people who didn't have that, it was, again, we'd have to use a custom field in order to put in the expiration date, but it doesn't have a tie with the lot number. So now you can have that ability to add the expiration date and alert you if the expiration date's not there. And when you turn it on,
Dan, I was just curious, if you turn on any sort of traceability, does that mean that all your products have to be either lot or serial tracked, or can you then select that on the product level?
As long as, on the, you're not going to be specifying that there is a serial number for that particular item. But what's going to happen is every transaction type that you're going to be bringing up, whether it's a sales order or an invoice here, is going to have a field for serial number, right? So as soon as you put in an item that has, we'll put in this inventory part here. If there were serial numbers there, then they would be, I got to choose a site in a bit. Then it would allow me to put those in, and then whether I specified, that this field is mandatory or not, would apply to all items. If it was blank, it would give you a message, or not. So I can record a transaction that doesn't have a serial number in it. I got to choose a customer, and it does allow me to save it, right? So even though that item didn't have serial numbers in it, so but you can choose to make that preference available, so that it doesn't. So if it's mandatory, but that's an all or nothing type of thing, right? So if the field is missing or blank, and you try to record it, it will prohibit the transaction from being recorded. Then we have in here reports. When you go into inventory, you have several transactional reports, so you can look at transactions by serial number, see your serial number that is in stock, and then serial numbers in stock by site. And I was taking a look at this earlier. So this report here brings up this this listing of everything that has a serial number in it, and I can click on the transact or the line item, and it will tell me where all that stuff is and by what serial number. But one thing that it can't do, and we discovered this yesterday, is it can't generate these serial numbers, and there's a pretty good reason for that. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to Shawn to kind of demonstrate the traceability inside of Katana.
Oh my gosh, Dan, you're killing me. I cannot read that.
That's Shawn's fault.
Oh, sorry.
My fault, okay.
Shawn.
It's not. Is it not big enough?
Breaking
No,
out
it's
the
fine. I'm just
breaking out the glasses.
very
All right. Okay, so we'll take a look. So one thing you'll notice as I kind of go into lot or serial number traceability is I'm not actually going to the settings area. I'm actually going to go because it's not a overarching selection. It's at the product level that you would determine, do I serialize this product or do I want to have this product lot traceable? So for example, I was just looking at cheese, and so cheese is lot traceable. It has an expiration date and all those things that go along with it. And so when we look at this product information under cheese, I have this product tracking area here, and I say, oh, there's no tracking related to it. There's batch or lot tracking or serialization related to that item.
And
And
Shawn,
so
can
you
I
would-
just ask you really quick? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no
This
problem.
is because I'm in a client's Katana right now, and they don't have this. This is an add-on to their regular Katana subscription. Yeah, they can add on lot tracking.
That's right. So it would be just traceability. So if you add on our traceability feature,
Oh, I see. Full traceability. Okay.
that will give you full traceability. So serialization.
Oh, and you can add FIFO.
I don't. No, FIFO wouldn't be part of that.
It says it.
Oh, I guess the batch numbers would come out in FIFO functionality. That is true. That
I
is
wonder
true.
if you have the option to toggle back and forth between the two. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
leave it to
problem.
Rachel to
I have to follow along in my
'cause
Katana when he's doing it because I want to know and understand exactly
well,
where he's going.
you're talking next session. We're going to be talking about costs. So
Okay. That I can jump in because that's what I'm doing.
Foreshadowing for next session with
Nice.
Shawn is FIFO as well as landed cost. So
Yeah.
Landed cost and moving average cost. So we can chat through those different functions and how you can kind of handle those in Katana. But today we're going to be focusing around lot traceability. But great point, Rachel. So it is an add-on feature. If you don't need it, you don't need to pay for it. But if you do need it, it's when you think of a food and beverage business, most of the food and beverage systems that are focused around those specific industries are very expensive when you add in this lot traceability functionality, and that's built into Katana. So it is, from a value offering perspective, quite reasonable. So on the other end, you have your serialization products. So let's look at, I think I set up like a lounge chair. So I think it was a chair. It was some kind of chair. It was a chair. I'm trying to remember what I did. Yeah, it must have been a lounge chair. Okay. And if it isn't, we'll turn it on. So I can turn this on to be serialized, and you'll notice that it comes up with, and it's assigning serial numbers. Let's go back here. What did I assign to serial numbers? I know I can go check over here. I don't want to assign serial numbers to all of my inventory. So on the serial numbers, I have my coffee table that's set up with a serial number. So let's go and look at my coffee table here. Okay. So the coffee table that I have set up here, I can see that I've set that up as serialized, and Katana will generate serial numbers for our manufactured products for us. And it'll allow you to identify what format you want that serial number generated in. So you can edit how that format is set up within the system. So you can kind of decide how you want it to work. today it's going to copy your order number and then your sequence. So there's some relation to the order it was produced on, or purchased from, and the sequence that it was then received in. Okay.
And that was something that when Shawn and I were talking about this yesterday, that QuickBooks Enterprise does not do. It doesn't create those serial numbers typically because you're either recording the serial number as they are received, or you are recording the serial number as it's sold, not necessarily manufacturing said serial number. And that's one of the key distinctions that we discovered yesterday.
Yeah, it's a great point. Like when you think of, for example, this is a manufactured product. I'm making this coffee table. So obviously the coffee table that I'm making now doesn't already have a serial number associated to it. So Katana needs to generate that serial number for that particular product. And so because we have more of a focus on the manufacturing side of businesses or industries, that makes sense that Katana's, built in that functionality, whereas maybe enterprise isn't as geared towards manufacturing. And so that's where, bringing in serial numbers that are already assigned to parts is the primary use case that they're solving for. So then it comes down to, I guess we can go through some transactions. Like when I buy a product, how do I assign a lot number? Or what would you think would make sense, Dan, from here?
Yeah. So, I just wanted to have people see that you could have the lot number or the serial number. So you do have the ability to do both in one file. And then, where you would, where you were, that screen that you were just looking at, where you have all of the lot numbers or the serial numbers, but you can see what the supporting detail. And I think that's one thing that we want to talk about too, is the difference between the reports, where I showed in QuickBooks, you got to go into a report in order to see some of this stuff. But in Katana, it's one of those like learning, changing the workflows from one system to another, instead of being solely or mostly relying on running reports. You're more working in live data. Or
that's a great point. Yeah, you're not really as much running reports as you're looking at real-time data. So for example, if I'm going to go over to my stock screen, okay, here's my inventory, right? So I've got all my inventory listed out. I can see sort of my costing and my quantity. And then there's this 2 tabs here. I've got my batches and my serial numbers. So I can go and look at my batches, for example. So I've got a few batches in the system currently: milk, cheese, and I have a created date and an expiration date in here. So I could have assigned an expiration date when I received in or created or made the milk or cheese. And so I can put those dates into the system and track, making sure I'm not selling products that are expired or, letting them sit on the shelf before they expire. And then when we look at the individual cheese here, I can click on this 10 pieces. And this helps me see the transactions that have occurred against that particular batch number.
That's everything, by the way. We look at that all the time. The movements. Wait, what happened with this? What happened with that? It's so important.
And you're not running a report. I mean, it almost is, seems like a report, right? Because it's happening, but it's live data. So the moment a new batch is added into the system, it is live and visible on here. So I'm not having to print out a report, and then it does allow me to click through things much more readily. So for example, I'm looking at this cheese here. I can see that I have 10 in stock. I can see I had what sort of removed an item here on a sales order. And then I also had manufacturing orders that added inventory into the system. So I can see the transactions that have occurred to create the inventory that I have today. all related to this individual batch. And if I wanted to click in on any one of these, I could go, for example, into manufacturing order 21, and I could see, what was related to this. So I could see, the milk, which batch number was associated to that. And I can also see the lemon and salt that was used on that, which aren't batch tracked. So only the milk needs to be batch tracked. And then also the manufacturing processes and who actually worked on that job. So when you're thinking of that drill down capability, if this batch for whatever reason was returned, you had something from batch, 10,001 returned, I can go into that manufacturing order and see everything else that was produced on this, where it was sold, and then also any raw materials that were used, and maybe where the product 10,000 or 1,000 milk batch was used, to making sure I'm cleaning up all of the items that are associated to the batch that we had a return on, that there was maybe some issues with.
I like that it allows some raw materials to be batch tracked, but you don't have to batch track it.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to. I mean, if you aren't required to do serialization or batch tracking, it's not like a fun thing to do.
No, it's all.
But we do make it relatively easy to handle within your proper workflows within Katana. But it is an extra level of control and operations that if you don't have to do it, I don't recommend it.
Are there preferences for the traceability as far as like being alerted or making something that is required, especially if it's a compliance thing? Definitely would want to make sure that they do that in that particular industry, or is it more of a open field, so to speak?
Yeah, so like usually, for example, if you're like ISO 9001 compliant for like a machine shop industry, their requirement is that you understand what manufacturing order every item was produced on, and the operations that job went through, and who worked on that job with a sign off on that. And so that would be what the requirements are for that specific standard. And so any industry that you're currently operating in will force you to comply to those standards, because you won't be able to sell your products into customers that require you to meet those standards. And usually you have to show some form of documentation or proof that you're meeting those standards, whether that be a barcode with the lot number on it, or each item having a serial number on it. Those are things that you might have to produce to show that you're meeting those standards. But it's usually industry driven. So if you're looking at, moving into a medical industry, maybe you're currently a machine shop and you're like, hey, we could start producing parts for instruments used in the medical industry. That sounds like a great idea, but are you set up from a technology perspective to actually meet the compliance requirements? That's something you'd want to look into prior to starting to produce parts and sell into the space.
But I think he also is meaning, will it let you even do, like, it won't let you do manufacturing order if like your components are expired or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, it just won't let you. Like you'll have to add new or buy new materials. So the system won't allow you to build something if
that's
any
right.
of the items are either out of stock or expired.
You've got it exactly, Rachel. Great point. So what the system will do, like say if we were to go and create a manufacturing order for cheese, so I could go in here and I'm going to go and make some cheese. So we're going to make some cheese. Because this is a batch produced product, it's going to require me to identify a batch number that I'm using here. So I can add it to an existing batch, or I can go and put in the batch number here, and I can create a new one and confirm. And I could have added in the expiration date, but it won't let me complete the manufacturing order until a batch number has been assigned to that manufacturing order.
Yeah, and I just this is for somebody like me, this is so important, because one company that I used to work at, they used to do all of their components just on a whiteboard, and like, do we have all the things? And there was no way that was accurate. It was always off. And so we never knew if something, we had all 7 items, or if we had 6 and one was missing. And, we manufactured off site. And so something like this, we would have known immediately if there was a reason that we couldn't put in that manufacturing order.
Yeah, and it'll also identify that right on the shop floor for the employee that is using, say a device, and they're going in and completing that order. It'll say, well, you have to add a number, a batch number to this. You can't complete it. So there's controls in place, not only for the people, let's say in the front office, but also in the back office to ensure that the standards are being met and you have that proper compliance that's in place. So those controls, prevent an employee from doing something without having the proper traceability information entered into the system.
Yeah, that's what I really like about it. It's really great in that way.
Yeah, and that's that kind of leads to what we were talking about last week about how QuickBooks is really good about the rearview mirror of reporting and doing things of what you did do, whereas something like Katana is more forward facing, more planning oriented, and would catch problems before they start, as opposed to recording the problem after it happened.
Yeah, it feels very databasey as opposed to it's my reporting system.
Yeah, that's right. So like, for example, you're looking at your serial numbers, and I can go and maybe create a quick job for like a coffee table. So if I go and manufacture it, and usually this would be like an electronics style company, but let's say I made some coffee tables here.
Cheese electronics.
Cheese electronics. So I'm going to go and say we're going to go and make, I don't know, 10 coffee tables here. We'll see. So I've got, the components, wood and paint to make it. It's going to go through these different operations. But let's just go and say that, I completed this. So when I go and complete this, it's now you've got this traceability area here. And so what the system's gone and done is it's created the 10 serial numbers that are associated to the 10 products that I've now produced. And it's generated those automatically in the system.
And just a side-by-side comparison here in QuickBooks, as I was curious myself, I'm building something inside of QuickBooks using a build assembly. The only thing I can do with regards to entering in my serial numbers is here and enter in multiple serial numbers. Now I got to either scan them in with a barcode or type them in, which is now, I think the technical term is a pain.
Yeah, not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is like, because we don't assign them, we don't create them automatically on serial numbers on purchase orders, just because the idea was, well, if you're serializing items that you purchase, that must mean that they're already serialized. But I can see ChatGPT doing a good job, and you could just say, hey, ChatGPT, generate 10 serial numbers for me with commas in between, and you could just paste that into Katana, and that would generate those serial numbers within a couple seconds. So that would be a quick way to solve for that.
Or you could train your Katana AI to do that.
Katana AI is not good enough to do that yet, but we've just released some really cool things. It'll graph out some really cool sales analysis for you. So the Katana AI bot is ever improving, and it'll definitely get to a level where it'll be able to sort of analyze your reconciliations and point to, looking at your Shopify orders and ensuring that they've all been entered into Katana. Some really cool stuff that we're going to be releasing shortly.
Are you going to be able to, never mind. That's something I can see in a report, I guess. Never mind. I was going to ask something about cost of goods sold, but I could probably just see that in the screen. Okay, never mind.
Cool. No worries. So just back to the serialization thing, I just wanted to quickly show, again, I'm not running a report. I'm just kind of going to that serialization thing. And then I can see, I just produced all these serial numbers, and I can see the manufacturing order that it came from. And I can click right into that manufacturing order. I can see the product here. I can click into that. And if it was sold, you would see what sales order it was sold on. If there was a transaction or stock adjustment done relative to that serial number, you'd see that as well. So all that information is available here, and you can kind of click through to find it. And there's these filters in place. So if you do get that call up where someone's on the phone and saying, hey, I'm just calling you relative to, serial number 006, you can go and find that in the system really quickly. And hey, here's the manufacturing order it was produced on, and, see the date it was added and any information relative to it.
Are you able to, and this is where, my older QuickBooks mind is having, wanting to make sure I'm covering the bases. Are you able to filter or sort this list like multiple ways, or is it more one field or another? So like if you a certain date range, and this is probably across the system, but are you able to add multiple filters in when you're looking at a list of anything?
Yeah, you can definitely add multiple filters in. So if I wanted to look at, for example, all the serial numbers I produced, this month, I can apply that date range, and then I can say, and I want them to, they were part of a specific, item code. So they were part of a table group, and they were a specific serial number. I'd be able to do all that really quickly within the system. Or you just want to organize it. You want to see, like, I want to organize this by top to bottom rather than the other way around. So you can go and do that really easily within the system. So some really nice things. But maybe you want to reorganize your grids as well. You can go and drag and drop them and, maybe put those in different areas. So you can go and source those. And maybe there's some things on here you don't want to see. Like, I don't really care if it's in stock or not. I can just get rid of that. So you can, customize and move the grids around and make them kind of work for you, and really increase your efficiency with utilizing the tool.
All right. So that kind of puts a button or a bow on the traceability comparison between Katana and QuickBooks Enterprise. And I hate when it does that. As soon as I turn something off, it makes my face so huge. But it's not on purpose, really.
Let's get so close to your camera, Dan.
So next week we're actually going to take a week break because this is the last follow-up appointment for my wife's surgery. So they always seem to do it on Wednesday. So we're going to take next week off, but the week after we'll have Shawn back, and we'll talk about some of the things that Rachel foreshadowed: FIFO, cost calculation, and landed costs. So we're going to talk about the costs of some of these things, not how much it costs to purchase the software. We're going to talk about the cost of the items that you're tracking. So we'll appreciate you joining us this week, and we'll see everybody next time on the Workshop Wednesday. Oh, and before I go, I'm sorry, Rachel, I'm covering you up with a QR code. If you want to learn more about Katana, there's a QR code there. You can take out your phone and learn more about it right now. And we will see you next time on the Workshop Wednesday as soon as I'm looking for the outro video. There it is. Bye.